The sun was barely rising over the silent stretch of the Arizona frontier when the story of a cowboy named Rowan McBride began to take shape. He wasn't well known, not the kind of man who chased glory or carved his name into saloon doors. Rowan was just a drifter with a steady hand, a quiet voice, and a way of looking at the horizon as if he was searching for something he'd lost a long time ago. Folks who knew him said he had a good heart, the kind of heart that made him help strangers more than he helped himself. Welcome back to the channel. Saddle up, partner, because today I'm telling you one of the most powerful stories to ever ride out of the old Wild West. It's the story of a cowboy who found gold on Apache land, made a choice almost no one else would have made, walked away from a fortune, and then, 13 years later, the Apache people came riding back into his life with a repayment he never expected. This is a tale of honor, trust, danger, and a promise that traveled further than any bullet ever could. Now, lean in and listen close. Rowan McBride had been drifting for weeks when he first crossed into Apache territory. He knew it was dangerous. Every saloon talk, every campfire whisper warned him the same thing: don't trespass. Don't hunt. Don't dig. Apache land was sacred. Trespassers didn't always come back out the same way they went in. But Rowan wasn't trespassing for greed. He wasn't looking for gold, land, or even a fight. He just needed water for his horse, Shade, who'd been limping for 2 days. Shade wasn't just a horse. She was his partner, his only constant in a life full of drifting and dust. The sun was beating hard when he finally spotted a narrow canyon. In the shade of red stone walls, he found a stream trickling through the sand. As he knelt to drink, Rowan saw something glinting under the water. At first he ignored it. Plenty of things glinted out in the desert: glass fragments, crushed tin, even bits of quartz. But this glint didn't blink out or fade. It shone brighter. Rowan reached down. His fingers wrapped around a smooth, heavy lump. When he lifted it out of the water, his breath caught. It was gold. Not dust. Not flakes. A whole nugget. The size of a man's thumb. Smooth. Heavy. Real. His heart thundered. He looked around instinctively, scanning the canyon. No hoof prints. No footprints. No arrows. Nothing but silence pressing against him like a held breath. He dipped his hand back into the stream, brushing the silt aside. Another glint. And another. Rowan froze as realization hit him like a rifle but to the ribs. He'd found a gold vein. On Apache land. A vein that could change a man's life forever. His stomach twisted. Any other cowboy, any prospector, outlaw, bank boy, even preachers on the wrong day, they'd have sprinted back into town and claimed the spot as their own. Gold fever didn't just make men rich. It made them reckless. It made them killers. Rowan sat back on his heels, staring at the gold nestled between the rocks. For a long time, he didn't move. Shade nudged him gently, as if reminding him that choices had consequences. He looked at the canyon walls again, and for a moment, he imagined something. He imagined the Apache people who lived here. Men riding with painted faces. Women gathering herbs along the river. Children laughing near the water's edge. He imagined this place not as a treasure for him, but as a home for them. He held the gold nugget in his palm for a long time, feeling its weight. Then, quietly, he dropped it back into the water. He stood up, mounted Shade, and rode away. No witnesses. No applause. No reward. Just a cowboy and his horse riding out of a canyon that could have made him rich for life. 3 days later, Rowan was cooking beans over a small fire when he heard the sound of approaching hooves. His hand instinctively went to his revolver, but before he could draw, 4 Apache riders appeared around the rocks. Their leader, a tall man with a hawk feather tied to his braid, stared down at Rowan with unreadable eyes. Rowan raised his hands slowly. The Apache leader spoke first. You found something on our land. Rowan swallowed. I found water, and I found gold. I touched neither longer than a breath. Why did you not take it? Rowan hesitated. He wasn't a man of speeches. Finally, he said, because it wasn't mine. For a moment, there was only wind. No one moved. No one spoke. Then the Apache leader nodded once. A short nod. A powerful one. Like an oath. He pointed at Rowan. One day, we will repay you. Rowan didn't understand, but he didn't ask. The Apache rode away, disappearing into the dust like smoke. Life went on. For the next 13 years, Rowan drifted from town to town, doing odd ranch work, breaking horses, helping settlers build fences, delivering mail where stagecoaches wouldn't go. He never grew wealthy, but he never starved either. Shade grew old and passed on. Rowan buried her under a cottonwood tree and didn't ride another horse for a year. Time softened him, but it didn't break him. Still, the road grew harder as his hands aged and his back stiffened. By the time Rowan reached the tiny mining town of Silver Creek, he was nearly 60. His hair had gone gray, his revolver was rusted, and the world was changing faster than he could ride. Silver Creek wasn't friendly to drifters. The railroad was coming, and men with money wanted quiet streets, not dusty old cowboys taking space by the saloon wall. Rowan got a job sweeping floors at the local hotel. Not glamorous, not heroic, but honest. And honest was enough for him. Then came the night everything changed. A gang of bandits rode into Silver Creek, guns blazing. They wanted cash from the saloon safe, whiskey from the bar, and horses from the stable. Anyone who stood in their way was shot without a second thought. Rowan was sweeping the hotel porch when the first gunshot rang out. People screamed. Lamps smashed. Someone yelled for the sheriff, but the sheriff was already bleeding in the dirt. Rowan ducked behind a barrel, heart pounding. He hadn't drawn a gun in years. His hands shook. But then he heard a child's voice coming from the alley. Please help. Rowan didn't think. He moved. He rushed across the street, tackled the little boy behind a water trough, and shielded him as bullets ripped through the air. A bandit spotted them and aimed. Rowan braced himself. But the shot never came. Instead, the bandit's gun fell from his hand. Not because he dropped it, but because an arrow struck clean through his forearm. Another arrow flew. Then another. Shadows emerged on the rooftops. Silent. Deadly. Fast. Apache warriors. Half a dozen of them. Silver Creek froze in shock. The bandits didn't even have time to run. The Apache moved like specters, their arrows cutting through the smoke. Within a minute, the street was silent except for the trembling of terrified townsfolk. Their leader stepped forward, the same man Rowan had seen 13 years earlier, though older now, with more gray in his braid but the same fire in his eyes. He walked toward Rowan slowly. You thought we had forgotten. Rowan blinked. He looked around at the Apache warriors, at the town that had nearly been destroyed, at the boy he had saved still clinging to his sleeve. The Apache leader said, "You gave us respect. Today we give you protection." Rowan didn't know what to say. Words felt too small for what was happening. But the Apache leader wasn't finished. He lifted his hand, and two warriors stepped forward carrying something wrapped in deerskin. "A gift," the leader said. "For the gold you left untouched." They set it gently at Rowan's feet. When Rowan unwrapped it, he felt his breath catch just as it had all those years ago by the stream. Gold. Not nuggets. Coins. Bars. Jewelry. Pieces of Apache history, carefully gathered, carefully guarded. Not stolen. Not mined. Traded. Crafted. collected a fortune worth far more than the gold he had once walked away from. The Apache leader bowed his head. You honored our land. We honor your spirit. The people of Silver Creek watched in awe as Rowan stood there trembling, tears filling the corners of his eyes. He hadn't expected anything. He hadn't asked for anything. But fate has a way of circling back around to the people who walk the harder path. The Apache mounted their horses. As they rode out of town, the leader called back, "Remember, Rowan McBride. A man is measured not by what he takes, but by what he refuses." Rowan lived the rest of his days comfortably, but more importantly, he lived with a sense of peace he had never known before. And whenever someone asked him how he came into his fortune, he always told them the same thing. Not by gold I found, but by gold I walked away from. Because sometimes in the Wild West, the greatest treasure wasn't hidden in rivers or mountains. Sometimes the real treasure was honor, respect, a promise kept, and the kind of choice that echoes across years until it returns, carrying the weight of gratitude. Thank you for riding with me through this story. If you enjoyed this tale from the frontier, sit tight, because more Wild West stories are on the way. Stay true, stay brave, and keep your eyes on the horizon.